Right.
Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of fiscal year 2027 for the Milton Planning Board. At this time, I would like to now call the meeting to order and begin by introducing the members of the board and our staff.
Cheryl Tagayas, Secretary.
Sean Fahey, member.
Maggie Field, member.
Hal Munger, member.
And Meredith Hall serving as chair. With us this evening, we have our staff, Avanti.
Yeah, Avante Grady, Assistant Planning Director.
Liz Manning, Planning Director.
Great, thank you. And for administrative items, we don't currently have new minutes to approve, so we can move to future meeting dates, which will be on July 23rd and August 6th. Will be the next regular scheduled meetings that we will have. Staff update. Start.
Just briefly about the minutes, I do have some minutes for you to sign, Cheryl. So those can be posted on the
Before I leave?
website.
Okay.
Yep, I have 10 actually, some from May, March, November, and October.
Great.
We have some in the folder too, just so we don't look as if Avanti's not keeping up because
Yeah. Doing a good job.
we have some that were put in the folder this week, so hopefully I can review those next week and get them out to you in advance of our next meeting.
And by the way, that looks like we're right up to speed, right? There's 423, 514, 611, and 625.
Right, that'll bring us right up.
Great job.
Yes,
Thank you, Amanda.
of course. Next I'll provide an update about the open space and rec plan. So a couple of focus groups did take place this month, one on the first, with the Council on Aging. And then there was one a couple days ago with West Milton residents, at Town Hall. And so I attended the second one and I thought it was a great meeting. Residents were passionate, had a lot of great ideas and just kind of shared their kind of needs and recommendations just in terms of that part of town. I think it kind of echoed kind of some of the things that you've shared, Cheryl, just how they kind of feel like there's been a little bit less attention in that area and just kind of the need for various amenities like in that area of town. So it's just nice to hear what the specific ideas are. So I know Craig's gonna put a summary of those two focus groups together, and so I'll make sure to share that with the board. So
Great.
And then
So on that, just because in the folder, there's a letter to the planning board and planning department from the West Milton Neighborhood Association. And they do identify one of the things that we've talked about before, so I just wanted to, a couple of things we've talked about before. So not just the kind of the open space nature, but the abandoned building behind the food mart, Brook Road, that has an overlay, but that overlay contemplated some site assemblage. So that parcel that's vacant can't utilize that zoning. It can utilize the MBTA Blue Hills Parkway Subdistrict zoning. But I know, Liz, I'd like to keep this on our agenda, our radar, because enough residents have talked about it. And Al and I both, when we were out talking to voters, in the spring, it was something in that part of town that was pretty consistently brought up. And so I know you had said that there was some outreach with the owner, or that you could do some, and I just wanna make sure that we continue to follow up on that. So I don't know if you have any updates.
I don't have,
Liz?
I don't have any updates on that particular site, although I did get an inquiry from the Board of Health, because I know there have been concerns about, the status of the building itself and the safety and the concerns with rodents and what have you, so I am in communication with them. I'm happy to reach out to the owner again, to see, I know when we had a conversation with them a couple of months ago, they came in to talk about what their options could be with the MBTA zoning. It was sort of like, well, maybe you could bring it back with a different, sort of concept that gets you closer to what's allowed under the zoning.
What I would say to that also is maybe bring a concept to us. And if it doesn't meet the zoning, see what we think of it. Because if that's what it takes to kind of get it to a redevelopment, then we should have a neighborhood meeting about it and see what residents think. Rather than just say, revise it, and it might be that it doesn't pencil out. And so it just continues to sit there, which is why, what I suspect has happened and why it sat there for so many years the way it is.
How big is that parcel?
I don't know, but I can look it up.
It's deep, it's narrow, but it's fairly deep.
I think it's more than one parcel too, but
just while you look it up, from a safety perspective though, can't the Board of Health just condemn it and then have it come down, so at least it's not an eyesore, so it's just a clean slate?
There's a threshold you have to reach to be able to condemn property. I mean, it's a pretty strong move for a town to condemn property because of what it means for whoever the property owner is. So they're probably gonna stay, within their threshold, exactly.
Try as hard as possible to work with the owner,
Yeah.
right? To sort of just continue to try to come to some, can it be repaired, can it be, sort of shored up, I don't know. But I think that's probably what's been going on, is trying to help the owners, with their property interests.
so it's,
But it might be reaching a point where, it's just gone too far, with it being too dangerous. I mean, that happens too, and that's not fair for the neighbors.
so So the parcel is 16,655 square feet,
How'd you get that so
or
fast?
0.38 acres. So,
Yes.
you know, it abuts several multifamilies on Blue Hills Parkway and, the church. I think that's the,
Yeah, the parking lot for the church. Yeah, is in
Yeah.
the back.
and then there's one single family on Laurel Road. So that's the one at the time the zoning overlay was done, was also in really bad shape. And it was contemplated that that would be combined and that would give this other parcel, more frontage. And
Not sold.
since that's sold separately, you know, it's not possible, and that zoning was kind of drafted with that kind of, parcel in mind, so it doesn't really work. So I'd rather see us work with the owner on something that we think makes sense and the neighborhood thinks makes sense. So if you could convey that message, Liz.
Yeah.
How long has it
If others
been-
agree, well, I guess first, I'm asking Liz to do that, but if others agree,
No,
yeah.
I totally agree. That's just been, you know, sort of a blight on the town and
How long has it been in that state?
Oh, gosh, 10 years?
10 years.
Oh, really?
at least
At least maybe
more.
Mm.
So long.
When they
Yeah.
closed down Knights of Columbus and then, you know, it just.
And they, I don't know why they started demolition and then without a project approval in hand, I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay. Oh,
But,
so they did some demolition?
well, that building is, the way you see it, it was occupied.
Yeah.
It used to have Instinct Dance Studio in there.
Oh,
I do
right.
remember when they moved to Quincy was the time that the building went vacant. But I happen
It's
to
been
know from
more
my
than 10
daughter
years,
going
I
to
think,
dance
yeah.
studio there,
Yeah.
there was definitely mold in that building, so it wasn't in great shape then, but it was it the Knights of Columbus? They sold it, so.
Yeah, so I think
Back
that's good to
then.
have a follow-up. So Avanti, why don't you finish with your,
Yeah, I was just gonna transition to just a brief update about the Adams Street Improvement Project, MassWorks grant. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, just cause I know Hal reached out to me about the schedule for the project, so I just wanted to share, there is kind of like a high level schedule that's available. I'll make sure to share that with the board too, but based off of this schedule, it looks like in September there will be a listening session, and
Okay.
then December a public meeting, and then like June of next year, the second public meeting, so that's kind of where that's at right now, so.
So Avanti, one thing on that, I appreciate all the back and forth that you've been putting up with and relaying the information, I appreciate that. So I've been speaking with the East Milton Neighborhood Association, and one comment they had was, with the timing that you shared, their question was, will the turning movement counts be done, when will that be done? And their concern is if it's done over the summer, there'll be less impact shown than it would be if it was in the fall. I understand that these things have timelines and schedules to keep, but just to point that out that, right, obviously the traffic will be less in the summer than it'd be in the fall. So if there's a way that it could be tailored or followed up with to kind of balance those two, it'd be appreciated for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just had this scheduled because there was like a resident on Mechanic Street who had reached out and they're like, oh, like, how can I be involved? Like, you know, when is engagement gonna happen? And I was just like, well, that's a great question. And so, yeah, I got the schedule from engineering, and so and then
Great.
Al followed up and was like, oh, well, let's do like that.
Great, great,
Yeah.
So,
appreciate that.
I'll look into your question now. That's a good one.
And they're out there surveying, right? Did I see that? I was.
Yeah, that's what some neighbors said, that they saw people out there surveying.
Yeah, so I'm sure that'll get people checking in and,
Yeah.
you know, wanting to make sure they keep tabs on it, so.
Yep.
So that's great. Yeah, we'll stay on top of it.
Okay.
All right, and then I just had a couple of quick things. I was gone most of the last 2 weeks. The Housing Production Plan Advisory Committee is meeting next week, next Wednesday, and we'll be discussing the reschedule moving forward for the public meetings and I'm having a phone call tomorrow with Karen Sonnenborg, consultant, about the agenda for that, to see if she's got some other things that she wants to try to cover. Get that agenda posted tomorrow and out to the committee members. I had a quick check-in with Nick Milano today about the economic development plan. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I need to go back and re-listen to, or review the minutes from the joint meeting to make sure that I've kind of got the full scope of the conversation and sort of what the expectations are moving forward. My quick recollection is that we are, looking back to MAPC to give us some more current pricing and to try to address some of those additional scope items. That's sort of my quick recollection, but I do need to go back and look at those minutes again. But the two of us are gonna meet most likely either tomorrow or next week and get that ball rolling for that project. So that was all I had for those two things.
Thank you. Okay, then we can now move to public comment. We don't have anyone here in person. So if there's anyone on Zoom who has any public comment that they would like to make, they can raise their hand on Zoom and we will let you in.
So
I'm not seeing anyone.
raised hands, yeah.
Okay, all right. Then let's move on to the discussion of our short-term rental, the draft bylaw. And Liz, the goal tonight, going into this was sort of to clean up some of the things, that the unanswered questions that we were needing to finalize and discuss. Carolyn is not with us, she couldn't make this evening, which is fine. Liz actually had some discussion with staff, and maybe Liz, if you wanna just sort of tee that up.
Sure.
And
Yeah, absolutely. So you folks saw a third version of the bylaw in your packets, I think yesterday, in the folder yesterday. That was the result of, actually it might have been this morning, I apologize if it was this morning, I'm mixing my days up here.
it was yesterday.
That was the result of a conversation that I had with, Avanti and I had with the assistant town administrator and Carolyn on Tuesday to look at these different, to review the edits and what have you in preparation of tonight. So the changes from the version that you received last week and the one that came in just, in the last 24 hours, pretty minor. I had wanted her to add back anything that was struck out just for consistency purposes, because some of the language was clearly struck as a strike through, some of the definitions and what have you, that we decided at the last meeting that we didn't want to keep. But then there were other sections that were also struck, but were just sort of struck, they were just sort of removed from the document. So it was really a little nitpicky in that sense, but I just wanted it to be really clean. Like, this is where we started, and this is the discussion, and this is sort of exactly what was struck. So there were probably like a half a dozen items that were struck. So that's clear in this draft dated 7/8/26. You're gonna see all of those strikeouts. And so we had a bit of a conversation about the sort of like how this is gonna relate to the, sort of if there's any potential conflicts with the zoning bylaw. So she added some of that language in here around being very clear about under section 3 that, notwithstanding any contrary provision to the town zoning bylaws. So we had some conversations around that. This is sort of, kind of leading up to the larger issue, which is I had a really good meeting. We had a really good meeting today with the Board of Health Director, Caroline Kinsella. And I feel like and I have not been able to get the consultation I need with the building department. I think it's just a combination of resources and timing and what have you. My sense from my conversations today with Caroline is that this needs a longer runway than fall town meeting.
she is seeking a more intensive consultation. The building department consultation is yet to happen. I think we have kind of the beginnings of a working group and one of the things I heard at the last meeting was the potential need for some type of like more public process where we're getting feedback from the public, or wider feedback from the public. So those were some of the things that, you know, sort of, and some of the items that Carolyn Murray had shared out of the Tuesday meeting was, you know, the experiences in other communities. And she shared the town of Brewster had put this working group together, and, you know, did a pretty comprehensive dive into, you know, what's actually happening with these in the town. Now, clearly Brewster is a very different community, has a much larger pool of these. I think it was something around 1,000 or something was the number that I saw in their report. I just quickly skimmed it today. 20-page report from their working group. So, you know, some of the things that Brewster wanted it to happen in advance were, you know, the regulations are drafted. You've got your application in place for your permitting software. You know, your fee schedule has been really kind of, has really been kind of contemplated, right, in terms of keeping consistency and what have you. And I think the feedback that what I'm sensing is that the implementation of this is going to be a heavy lift. And having more of these questions answered before it goes to town meeting, I think would be really important. So that's that. I mean, but I also think it would be super helpful to have the conversations about all the things that Carolyn had flagged and the things that are still outstanding for the planning board. I mean, certainly those are things that should be discussed as well. But that's the feedback. That's where the sort of staff level feedback is right now.
So I think Caroline
Yeah.
Is very much in favor of having some sort of zoning around this or regulations around this.
Mhm.
And the question is, and it's really, I think, for town staff to try to, I think we've teed this up to sort of hand it over and say, okay, how is this in reality going to work? And Caroline definitely thinks, you know, it goes back to the argument, should we just ban them and just say no? And I think we all agree that they're gonna happen anyway, so at least we need to regulate the ones that exist and sort of control what's happening in those properties. So Caroline is very much in favor of this, but it was just how it was actually going to be.
She's looking, I mean, specifically her quote was she's looking for a much more intensive consultation.
What are some of the concerns that she has? Because we looked at bylaws from probably a dozen communities. We looked at a cross-section of them.
I honestly don't want to speak for her.
All right,
I'm just being perfectly honest, because part of it as well is there's a lot of conversation in here about sort of like the interplay between the different codes, right? The building code, the state sanitary code, the zoning bylaw. I need more consultation on that. I mean, if I've got to fall on the sword, I'll say I need more consultation on that, right? And so having the experts, right, the folks that are, you know, working every day in terms of, you know, investigating, you know, illegal rentals and you know, having to go out and sort of, you know, respond to the, I'm not saying that these are all, you know, unfortunately, there'll be a small percentage of these that will not be following the rules and won't be sort of, you know, what we're looking for, but they're responding to, you know, to the inspections and sort of the complaints and the different issues, and I feel like having them at the table and really understanding kind of like what this is gonna look like for them. I I don't have enough information to be able to, I couldn't even answer your question intelligently, like what exactly are the issues, because I don't wanna start quoting state sanitary code and occupancy limits and et cetera when I don't really know it well enough.
These are not, challenges that other communities haven't looked into.
Right.
So it's not like this is coming from Mars in
No,
terms of
not,
a
no,
kind of a
not at all.
bylaw.
Yeah, not at all.
And I was thinking, Carolyn could talk to, the towns that we pretty much drew from were Lexington and Newton, and speaking with their health departments.
But we know that from Hal's research, not all towns impose enforcement on the health department, or they don't require the health department to do enforcement, so.
Right,
You
and
know,
that, and
so-
that's part,
so
and
I-
that's part of the conversation, because unfortunately today, and again, timing's not awesome. There's been, it's the end of the fiscal year, there was some vacations and what have you, this was the first day that I was able to be in the building at the same time with Caroline. And that's because I was off for 10 days. Was unable to get Michael in the room at the same time, which would have been ideal. And so it just.
So I have a question.
Yeah,
Town meeting is when?
so town meeting is, I don't know that they've set the date yet. I'm hearing that there could be, warrants potential of articles could potentially be coming in as late as like the third or fourth week of this month. Don't hold me to that, I don't know that that's 100%, because they
Well,
haven't set the date, they
Yeah,
haven't
so
set the
if
date.
they haven't set the date, and let's say it's October and November,
Mm-hmm,
alright, I've worked on zoning articles for a number of years now. Wouldn't be unheard of for an article to get pulled back, or, just requested to be sent back for further study if it wasn't ready.
there's a
My
chance,
concern-
there's a chance that this could be regulation only, would not require a town meeting, right? Because if the desire is to get these things regulated, right, and to have a system and to have a process and to have a system that's gonna work well and it's gonna serve the owners, the neighbors, right? That was part of the conversation with Carolyn on Tuesday as well, that was brand new information to me, I said, would that have enough teeth, right? And actually, it's funny because in the conversation with Caroline today, she was talking about how she had just been advised by town council that they could adopt different fee schedules, right, for different items as a regulation and not necessarily have to bring it to town meeting, right, for certain things, right? So anyway, it came up as part of, but these are sort of like intertwined, right? Like these different boards and these different departments are all kind of like, it's intertwined.
It
And
is,
it's not just the bylaw language, it's the lift behind it.
so
So
I
you know what I
understand,
mean?
so I just wanna finish my thought,
Yeah.
The reason we're moving forward with a bylaw is that this is an unregulated use that's happening right now. And it'll continue to happen while people decide whether it should be this kind of bylaw or that kind of bylaw. If it's the implementation and which has to do with an application and an inspection, that's not that complicated. It's an application and it's an inspection. I understand it's adding a burden and maybe the health department doesn't have capacity to take the burden, so maybe it's the building department if they're adding inspections and adding plan reviewers. But we started this as a bylaw. We're not asking for it to be a regulation from the health department. We want, and we told the select board that we're working on this. They seem supportive of it. So I don't feel like we're in a position to pull it. I'd like to continue to move it forward and maybe at a further meeting, especially if we're not having to submit articles for another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. I think we should continue moving it forward, and I think we should review all the comments tonight. And then that'll give time for perhaps other conversations that you'd like to have, Liz. And even at that point, if we get to a point where we think it's ready, then it should be vetted by more than just the health department. It should be vetted by the select board, it should be discussed in a public meeting like we talked about. So I don't feel like
which will be challenging to line up in the timeframe. For when, you know, having a recommendation from the warrant committee, right, and getting it to that point.
So one of the things that has come out of warrant committee meetings is good comments. And so if we wait to submit it to the warrant committee, those comments are going to not come for months and months, because it'll be another town meeting. This is gonna get pushed out a year. And I just don't think that's a service to the residents, is to push it out like that.
Liz, would it be possible to ask for Board of Health and Building Department to attend one of our meetings and give them a chance to talk about what their concerns are? You know, I'd be more in favor of creating a bylaw that we have the mechanisms for enforceability instead of creating a bylaw that isn't gonna be enforceable because there are some limitations and we're not aware of them. And at a minimum, you know, we'll hear what their concerns are. Would you think we
Yeah.
have a meeting on the 23rd and a meeting on the 6th?
Yeah.
Those are the next two meetings. Do you think they'd be able to or be able to become prepared to talk to us?
I sort of posited that today at the meeting with Caroline, and I think she felt that there would have to be more conversations before, you know, coming to back to this board. So I think that possibly early August, and I can have another conversation with her. But that was a thought I had. And again, haven't been able to have that direct type of level of conversation with building yet. It's really key. It's key, so.
So sorry, were you gonna?
Oh, yeah, but you can go.
So I appreciate that it is a more burden and it's a new thing for town staff to have to wrap their heads around. We're all doing the same thing, I think, right? None of us were into this. So this is my newness showing, but so if we have to have a bylaw that's submitted, there's a time frame between when it's submitted and when it's actually printed, and then when it's actually the town meeting, right? So in that time frame, could we not still be working to improve the exact wording with Board of Health, with the building department to figure out exactly what they want to see out of it and what we want to see out of it, so that we're not taking our foot off the pedal, right? Because I'd hate to, as Cheryl said, right, to wait all the way till next April to do this. That's a whole nother year of neighbors in East Milton complaining about the party house and having to deal with that, that they're gonna have to keep putting up with that if we don't stick with what we've already started here.
Right.
So I totally appreciate that, but I also
Yeah,
think we need to think
yeah.
about the community in terms of that, you know, people have come here, people have reached out to us. I was at a birthday party the other day for my son's friend, and someone came up to me asking about the short-term rental, if it was gonna be on the agenda tonight. So it's something that's people are thinking about,
For sure.
and I'd hate to miss this opportunity where people are thinking about it, and people are putting their thoughts into this and the work that's here to delay it, so.
Yeah.
So, I'm wondering how the recent decision, by the court in the Quincy case,
Yeah.
plays
Affects
into it.
us. Yeah.
So Quincy, my understanding is that their bylaw is that it's prohibited anything under 31 days. And my interpretation of the decision of the court was, it is, in this instance, it is not considered a pre-existing non-conforming, even though they were renting it out since 2016, and in Quincy, their bylaw took effect like in 2021, I think.
Yep.
So, the judge ruled that it is not considered a pre-existing non-conforming. So I was wondering, one of the reasons we were punting it off to the selectmen were because of the pre-existing non-conforming issue.
Right.
So if this decision is not a concern, do we have to do that, number one?
Right.
the zoning bylaw would take a 2/3 at town meeting.
Oh, okay, yeah,
General bylaw, I think, is 50.
it's, okay, so that's
Right?
another
I
thing.
think,
Yeah,
I think, but I know for sure zoning is 2/3.
yeah,
So I'm trying to think of ways to, like I said, like if there's an avenue that's regulatory only, for instance, right, and doesn't have to go to town meeting, right? Because, you know, these can be, this is a very complicated topic, so, I mean, I'm not trying to circumvent town meeting, but I'm just thinking about, you know, like needing to have,
If we needed to make changes or tweaks.
I'm not understanding what's become so complicated since we've been talking about this over a few meetings.
probably just my first conversation with the staff that are actually gonna be impacted.
Because
I gotta be perfectly honest with you, my very first conversation with the folks that are tasked with this. This does not live in the planning department at all.
actually, it's gonna live, I think it's better suited for the building department. They're the ones who are responsible to make sure that properties meet the building code. And only the time the health department gets called in is if there's some kind of like
Health-related issue.
health-related issue, whether it's some kind of infestation or whatever else. And so I guess I'm wondering whether we looked at a bunch of bylaws, none of them were regulations. Are there any towns that have this done by regulation? I don't know, and I would like to know that.
I think it was one.
And
Yeah.
secondly, you know, how many towns are just doing this with the building department and it gets kicked to the health department like any other residential unit gets kicked to the health department? So it's no additional work for the health department than it is currently for them. You know, most residential properties aren't inspected by the building commissioner unless a problem arises. Once you get a certificate of occupancy, then the building department usually has no reason to go inspect a home or even a multifamily building. That's not typically, I mean, maybe there's some inspection for something like the fire alarm system in a larger building, but, you know, I just don't understand where applying for these and maybe we have an opportunity to discuss whether there's an annual inspection or not. But I don't see where it's a lot of effort unless there's some additional burdens that we're trying to place on this that we haven't discussed, you know, because if it's something that's working, there's no reason necessarily to have further inspections, right? Like, if a home has adequate, bathrooms, has adequate bedrooms, has adequate parking spaces, there's no complaints, is there a reason for, you know,
Subsequent
inspections,
right,
yeah.
right.
And I saw that that's something as a discussion point that for our draft tonight. So I'm really hoping we're gonna talk about the draft because there's a lot of things that Carolyn raised in it. And there is, you know, a resident who asked me about the purpose and so I'm adding something to the purpose about protecting the character of residential neighborhoods. And so there's things like, I think that we understand what our intent is in trying to do this and we should get the best draft we have available and continue to get the input from staff. And we can then decide at subsequent meetings whether to pause it, but like Cal said, I don't think we should take our foot off the gas based
And
on
I
that one meeting.
Yeah, I do appreciate getting more resident input. I'm not against that because even in Quincy, they ban short-term rentals in their residential A neighborhood. So then I went online, Googled what their residential A neighborhood was. And their residential A neighborhood is the most restrictive residential zoning classification in Quincy. And it designates neighborhoods strictly for single-family detached homes. So in Quincy, they seem to be banning these in residential neighborhoods.
Just Res A.
Just, yes.
Just Res A,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And so if you remember the gentleman who came from is it Antwerp Street?
Yeah.
And he spoke at, if you remember what he said was, and this kind of like stuck with me, he said, I don't think these belong in residential neighborhoods. And I thought to myself, well, Milton is 97% residential neighborhoods. So does he fully understand that statement? And so does the average resident fully understand that statement? So when I read that Quincy bans them in their single family neighborhoods, or should,
Just one.
One resident.
Just residence A.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know what the I'm in residence A in Quincy,
Yeah.
but I don't know what the percent of the total is, but it's Quincy's, Caroline Kinsella was referencing Quincy's ordinance today. And, you know, Quincy's like 50%, you know, renters versus owner occupied or some number like that. I think it might have even flipped under 50%, that the tenure is more rental than owner occupied. It's just it's a very different.
Yeah.
And they took the zoning approach and they said, we're gonna prohibit them just in residence A, but you can do them as long as they're registered in these other places. So that's a completely different approach than what's being contemplated here. This is across the board, as long as you meet the requirements.
Describe residence A in Quincy. What is
I think the minimum lot size is like 7,500, 50-foot of frontage, or maybe 75 feet of frontage. It's dense. It's probably comparable to East Milton.
Maybe residence C here then. Residence C here, minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet, but I think it's 75 feet of frontage. But a lot of parcels rather don't meet that.
Residence A is 7650 minimum lot size, 25 frontage.
25 feet of frontage?
Yep.
In Quincy?
Residence A in Quincy.
Oh, Quincy.
in Quincy. Yeah, so I don't know if we should be looking at, so again, I don't think we should be stopping the conversation. I think there's a lot more conversation to be had. And maybe if Quincy is prohibiting it in certain neighborhoods, should we be looking at prohibiting it in certain neighborhoods? So the more time I look at different towns, everybody has, it's so different. And I only started looking at Quincy just the other day when I saw that article in the Ledger about how Quincy, won in court over the resident.
So to do it in limited areas means it's a zoning bylaw versus a general bylaw.
Right.
Well, I think it's definitely something, I feel as if we give the public something to talk about, you know how you just can talk in generalities, but once you have something on paper, it gives people something to read, something to contemplate. And, you know, other bylaws, general bylaws like the light trespass, the lighting bylaw, you know, went to town meeting twice and got referred back. I'd like to
And it may be
take
that
the
we
foot
have
on the
Caroline, we hear what she's saying and maybe don't put her, we take the health department out of it. 'Cause if it's-
And possibly because we also wanna help our town staff. And that we have heard from the building inspector that it's really challenging, so and some people might not wanna hear this, but do we pass a bylaw just to prohibit it for now, just to give him a tool, and then until we are able to work this out? Is it better to say no now and then take the time and
But
do
does that
something?
provide any measure of protection for the neighbors? Is there any, like,
It's kind of like a
Sure, it makes them
continuation,
illegal.
it's kind
Yeah,
of,
it's illegal.
in a sense,
But
it's
what
a
do they do about it?
continuation of, right, it's a
Notify the building
continuation of.
department.
but what
A
does,
cease
what can
and
the building
desist, you would get a
department do?
cease and desist.
What would they do to any property owner that's in violation?
But what if they said, well, it's just an unrelated, order was here per allowed in the zoning? I just think
Well,
it
I mean,
becomes
I
like
think
a
it's-
finger
It's
pointing.
I think
kind
there's
of-
plenty
those
of-
things come up.
Even if you have a functional bylaw, you're gonna have those same situations where someone's gonna give you that what if, you know, it'll become what ifs because they'll be saying, oh no, this isn't, I'm in compliance. I think you're always gonna have that risk. What I struggle with is, we're gonna spend hours, you know, continuing to ponder the language and the phrases and the verbiage and not have a good comprehensive understanding of the issues that are real issues for the building department and the board of health. And we're gonna drag the town through this discussion, and we'll eventually sit with them and we'll hear what they have to say. I don't know, I mean, that just doesn't make good sense to me. I'd love to know what the concerns of Caroline are and what the concerns of Michael are before we continue to do this. So just.
Suggesting that we don't go through the comments from today?
We have Liz who came in that effectively, you know, gave us a timeout. We got issues within the town and concerns with, you know, the people that are responsible for enforcing it. Yeah. Yeah,
I think we could do, I think we could go through some of this, but we need to hear from our staff. And I feel like we need to support the staff and hear the concerns as well. And I don't know how long Caroline has spent really going, you know, if she's been able to, it's a lot to digest.
She had definitely done some homework. She was looking at, she had had some conversations with other communities and was looking at some different bylaws. She had looked at Quincy's, she was talking about Quincy's in particular, but there are a couple of others. And again, this was literally the first opportunity to even have this face to face and try to understand, the beginning of understanding sort of, you know, what it potentially involves for them. And I think, like Meredith said, I think there's definitely a desire to be supportive, to work towards a solution. But just, you know, again, looking for a deeper level of consultation at this point. But I also I could see that, you know, having some of these policy questions discussed would be helpful as well. If that's gonna move,
'cause that might
that's gonna
help.
move the needle too, because it's not, some of it, when stuff comes up in here that requires further discussion, that is on point with, like, what's the code, what's the inspection requirement, what's the this, what's the that, I'm not gonna have a super intelligent answer right now for anybody. You know, that's kinda, it's
Those
out
are
of
some
my,
questions
it's out of my wheelhouse.
this,
So some of
yeah.
that stuff might make sense to kind of table a little bit.
Mm.
But if there are other sort of policy
Yeah, I think
considerations,
there are some.
right, that you wanted, that make sense, I mean, that will move the ball, right?
Yeah, my point about the other inspections, et cetera, the building code is the building code no matter what we do with this bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
The health department has regulations no matter what we do with this bylaw. And nothing about this bylaw will change that, just like other, you know, zoning
I think
articles and
this can-
bylaws that we worked on.
Right.
So, because, you know, so I think that's kind of in general, but I agree
Mhm.
that we should have consultation, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And we've said that in prior meetings, and I just feel like we're all here, we've had this on our agenda.
Mm-hmm.
We should talk about as much of this that makes sense, and get this as, to a point where there's more for town staff to react to, you know?
Yep.
We all have done, you know, a fair amount of work on this already, and,
Yeah, I think that makes sense for us to go through, you know, sort of finalize these things that we have, but here, you know, what do we need to tweak to make it, you know, less concerning to staff, if there is anything.
And if the board wants to go through it, I'll go through it, but I will say, we could or will be just wasting time, not knowing what the concerns are. So,
Yeah.
I'm only one of five, I guess, one of five.
Well, some of these are sort of low-hanging fruit, because I think,
there's one, as I said, resident who's been here speaking to us before, had reached out and said, under the purpose, could we add protecting the character of residential neighborhoods, as one of the purposes? So that,
I'm good with that.
seems
Yeah.
a good addition to me.
Yeah, and I didn't really
As long as
love
it's
the,
not in conflict at all with this 64G, section 14. Right?
I didn't love under purpose, C, enable residents to earn extra income from their properties. I mean, that's sort of implied. Like, why is that? Like, that, I don't know if that's,
That was kind of one of the purposes of the ADUs too, right?
because I think,
Because,
then I started looking at Quincy's, and their purpose is just, says the purpose is to provide a process through which certain dwelling units must be registered in Quincy for use as a short-term rental unit consistent with the regulatory requirements prescribed in this ordinance, and set up a compliant process for violations. So I don't think we need C. I prefer more protecting the neighborhood. I feel like that's what all bylaws are. But
What is it? Say
First-
that.
I just said to protect the character of residential neighborhoods, but I think that was similar to what Hull may have had, but it, I mean, that could be tweaked, but it just, that's the idea,
Mhm.
is,
and I think that should be the first one.
Page A.
Do you just wanna kind of go section by section with the
Yeah.
changes?
and then it, to Maggie's point, I think we could just flag C and, or.
I'm indifferent, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I think it's inferred that
That's
by someone having an
yeah.
Airbnb or short-term rental would make more income. Do we need to state it?
I think the
If it-
idea
if-
we hear sometimes is that, and we'll, maybe it'll come out of the housing production plan discussion is, you know, people struggle, like
Yeah.
everyone's every tax increase, you know, to be able to stay in Milton, we hear that. And so I do feel like it's a legitimate purpose, you know, in that situation. If it were to prevent somebody to say be foreclosed on or something like that, I mean, that's a legitimate purpose in my mind.
Alright, let's flag it and we can decide on that. So we have the definitions that were removed that are marked here. 1, 2, 3, and I think that was all for that page.
And then short-term rental would have a dwelling unit or part thereof, which I think was for clarification purposes, that was added.
Wait,
Can
where
we,
is
can we
that?
pull it up on
Was
the
that-
screen?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're all
sure,
looking
sure,
at the
sure.
same version, to make sure we're all looking at the same version in
The one I have is
today's.
3 hours old,
Seven-
yeah, it's
seven
got
Okay.
years.
7, 8,
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
But I think for the public who might be watching, it would be beneficial to have it on the screen as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Or part thereof, but yes, I just hadn't flipped the page on that, so that's fine.
Thanks.
So we are on the bottom of the page, oh, this is nice too, in color. This makes it easy.
Great.
Yeah.
This stuff
That's
makes
make
it
it
easy.
easier.
yeah, so she got rid of that, but in Quincy, they have it.
So that was discussed at our meeting with her, that was redundant.
Okay, cause in Quincy, which I liked, it said short-term rentals, the use of a residential unit for residential occupancy by a person or persons for a period fewer than 31 consecutive calendar days for a fee.
Carolyn Murray said that the state
State,
defines
yeah.
it itself, so that Quincy, is that in conflict with state definition, I don't know, but it seems like
Yeah.
having the state definition is the way to go.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that would rule anything anyway, right?
And so the state definition doesn't have anything about 31 days,
I think it does.
does it? Okay.
So these are the other ones that we're just determined to be struck, occupancy, occupant, and guest. And then there's that or part
Part
thereof,
thereof.
short-term rental of a dwelling unit, or part thereof.
Mhm.
With no more than the number of law. Owner adjacent, same minor change or part thereof, for clarification purposes.
Yep.
And then this is what we already discussed, notwithstanding any contrary provision to the town zoning bylaw. So I'll put this in the category of the conversation I had with Carolyn Lynn Murray on Tuesday about if there are contrary provisions in the town zoning bylaw, like what is the most efficient sort of method for dealing with that? So this is a blanket statement to say that this general bylaw for these types of uses will rule, right? But there are going to be contrary provisions in the zoning bylaw in terms of, different definitions for occupancy and the accessory use and things that have come up in other communities that have been the subject of the different, lawsuits and what have you, which I'm quickly getting myself familiar with. So definitely wanting to have her input on that as well. But that's the need for that provision. That this will rule if there's conflict with the zoning bylaw. And then these two things were added, I think at the request of the board, to be very clear that ADUs can't be used for that purpose and the owner adjacent as well.
So I have a question about, what's the difference between the terms primary and principal? So I've seen that those are used differently in different bylaws. So I Googled them to get find out the difference. And again, I don't trust Google all the time, but it said primary, the definition of primary has to do with a mortgage it's a mortgage and real estate term, where principal is a tax and a legal term. So I sort of was wondering, should we use principal / primary? Because I don't know what our other bylaws use, what term they use.
Yeah.
And so we should make it so that it is, because we did talk about this, that it's the primary residence
The primary residence of the applicant.
of the applicant.
But so you're saying, sorry, explain to me what you're trying to,
So,
Clear up?
no, it's a question.
oh, okay.
What's the difference between the terms primary and principal?
Gotcha.
And that what's used here, I'm trying to look for where the terms
So
used.
primary, it's referring to
And I can't find it now.
primary residence, meaning that's I'm assuming that's where you would
Yes.
live primary amount of time, the most amount of time.
Yeah, so that's what I thought, but when I Googled it, it said primary was the real estate and mortgage term.
But
I think it
just
can be
wondering where your
both.
question's
It can-
coming up.
So
Maggie's
are they
in
used
here.
interchangeably in this bylaw?
Where are you? Where are you?
Yeah, so I don't know, that was
Yeah.
just a, I
But-
forget
but is
where
it
it
written-
was.
are we
It
using the
was-
words?
it
Well, so
was-
like-
Principal is,
Owner occupied short-term rental, blah, blah,
Which is
blah,
not-
that's on page 1. It says lawful bedrooms within such dwelling unit that is the principal residence of its operator. That's a good, yeah.
that's
To
much-
me, when I read that sentence, I think the primary,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right, so I
But-
don't know if
yeah,
there, because then I
yeah.
was reading
If
somebody
pri- if
else's
prim-
and they
if
used a different
primary's-
term.
If primary's not used in this bylaw elsewhere to conflict, then
principals.
it won't, it should be okay. I don't know whether or not
Primary.
primary gets sort of used anywhere else, like in the zoning bylaw. And if there's any issues with that,
There is
but
one
again,
use.
that statement, you know, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, should sort of cover it. It's not, you know, it's not
So-
perfect.
I
Both
can
both are
kinda-
used, by the
I
way.
can kind of think of a principal residence as your tax. Like if you have a residence in New Hampshire and one in Florida and one in Milton, one of them is your primary or principal, I don't know which one,
Yeah.
right? For
Mhm.
tax purposes
Yes.
and
Mhm.
residency purposes, right?
Yes.
The other
Yeah.
two are not.
Yes.
So that might be what this is referring to. It's like, it's not just one of those other homes for you, but it's your primary.
Yeah.
I think we should ask Carolyn on that.
Yeah, so I just wasn't sure which term is correct
I think
Yeah.
it's something,
It's
I
a
think
good
it's something to
question.
look at,
and which is consistent
yeah,
that we
Mhm.
use as a
Right.
town.
right. And
Yeah.
and if they're being used interchangeably, that's probably not great. Okay.
Okay, so scrolling down.
So I had, I know we talked about, you folks have decided to not have that cap.
Mhm.
So, but again, for consistency purposes, I just wanted to make sure it was clear what was struck,
What was
so.
struck? Okay.
And then this is the question, you know, which, sort of, I guess, the question of the night. Which department for folks to file. This next section was struck.
Mhm.
Do you remember why Pete is highlighted?
Yeah, you know, I'm not 100%, I think I need to circle back on that one, Cheryl, because it looks very similar to the language under the strikeout on I.
That was a conversation that we had,
Okay,
that
Oh,
we
good.
were considering getting rid of it,
okay,
but then after discussion, I think we thought it did make sense to keep it in.
okay,
But so she probably just wanted to make sure we still wanted it
okay.
there.
Oh, that was the conversation about, if you're renting it, could you then
Right.
A
leave?
long-term
Yeah,
renter,
right,
can they,
right.
with the owner's permission,
Right.
can they do a short-term rental? And we sort of thought,
We're talking about visiting nurses and
Yeah.
things like that.
and we said, how much do we want to
How are you gonna,
involve with this?
yeah,
If the owner feels like it's
Right.
fine,
Right.
who,
But
you
I
know,
think we felt like this was something that the public should be able to have a conversation
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm,
But we
because
didn't
it is a
wanna take it
capital-
out, yeah.
mm-hmm,
Yep.
mm-hmm, okay, okay,
So the way that's written right now, that allows whoever the short-term renter is to rent it. To have a secondary rental, right?
No, it's, I think if you have,
A long-term tenant for whom it is a primary residence may, if allowed by the property owner, operate a short-term rental subject to the same rules and regulations as a resident owner. That's like subletting something that,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
right?
Right.
So we're saying you can do that.
mm-hmm,
correct.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and long-term tenant.
As long as the owner approves it, which is what we're saying elsewhere in here, so the owner would have to be able to,
so the
So what is a
long-term,
long-term tenant? What's that definition?
a year
of
lease,
year
so if you
lease.
sign a year lease, or even a 9-month lease, that you can then, but you would have to register it, so the person, the owner who's doing the long-term would not do the registration. But that is the part that I don't understand, how somebody can register it if they're not the owner. Because under our regulations.
It has to be your primary
Well,
residence.
if allowed by the property owner,
Right.
I would suggest that it's anticipating a process where somehow like when we get a sign permit and we have to get the owner to,
You would have the owner
sign
to
an
sign off on it,
affidavit.
exactly.
so if I'm renting from Sean, I could only list that apartment if Sean approves it. I think that is what that is saying.
That's how I'm reading
And
it,
that
you
you-
know, with,
Yeah, the
with
town would
Right.
have to have you sign off on
Be
that.
some
Right,
type of an owner's
right,
affidavit.
right.
Mhm.
So do we, in our definitions,
Mhm.
we don't have a long-term definition. Where is that if
Yeah.
we do have one?
No, I'm agreeing with you, it's not
That's a-
included in these definitions,
It's a state definition.
Is it?
I don't know the answer to that,
I'm fairly certain that it is.
okay. I'm familiar with tenant will and things like that, but I don't know that this is, maybe it's anything that's not short term. You know, I honestly, I would say,
Great.
oh, it's just not short, it's not short term, it's
And
anything
and then what's
31
short term? What's the short term
That's the
definition?
state
That's the
definition.
less
So
than
that's
31
the-
days.
So that's, yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if the state defines short term, if the state doesn't define long term.
long term, yeah, it could be in there.
Yeah, they do or they don't.
I'd be surprised if they don't, if they're defining short term.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is there anything wrong with putting the definition in?
yeah, I like definitions in it because I think I've said this before and I know it's kind of repetitive, but as a homeowner, I don't like them having to go look something up. I want everything in one document.
You know, we've just had a long conversation about, you know, notification effort we're going through, so people don't have to look all over the place for meaningful information.
Yeah, one of the issues is if the state changes its definition,
True.
right? So you have to have the reference to the state definition, and then you could say what, you're
And
gonna
then,
have to.
and then what it is.
Yeah, but like if the state, well, we'll have things out of compliance like we do now on certain state definitions, like farming or agriculture or something like that, right?
I think you could probably hyperlink to, like, I can't imagine that you can't hyperlink, like even within our own doc, you know, like where, to
Yeah.
make it easier for folks.
Could we not have our own long-term definition?
Well, then it would,
Can't be.
again, it comes back to that same question of, you know, if the state regs change,
No,
Then
no.
now
Can-
we're in a position where we
Can Milton not
have
have its
to-
own long-term definition?
as long as it's not in conflict with the state state requirements, we can't be in conflict. I don't know how it would be in conflict, but I know keeping it consistent with that is a good practice.
So let's add that to questions for Carolyn. Should we add one to it?
Long-term tenant definition. Okay.
And then going down to Q, renting, this is where we said renting for an hourly rate or rental durations of less than 24 hours, 24 consecutive hours shall not be permitted. And I think, I don't know if we had consensus, but that people felt more comfortable with not less than 7 days? Or did we think less than 7 days?
So, which one?
On Q,
Yes.
The new S.
It's new S.
the new S, I'm sorry.
The new S, yeah.
We did have this conversation, I think at that time we left it to something that we should bring to the public and have public input
Mm-hmm.
generally on.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that if you put a 1 week minimum, it's kind of a backdoor outlawing it, right? Cause I don't think a lot of people will rent any place for a week in Milton. Maybe they will, but
Yeah,
I'm just thinking of the place that I've stayed at, it's not generally a week, it's a weekend or it's a
yeah,
handful of days, it's not a, so
3 days.
this is my personal
Yeah,
experience.
if you think about, let's say somebody's coming for graduation at Milton Academy or Curry College, and they're coming for a couple of days, they're probably not coming for a week. If you're bringing a family, maybe instead of renting 3 hotel rooms, you're gonna try and do an Airbnb.
Yeah. I think we should get public. input
So
then.
I definitely think we should get public input.
Yeah, because as I think I mentioned last time when I talked to a couple people, they didn't want different renters every weekend.
Okay, yeah.
So,
That's,
you know, I'm for a longer rental period. I don't know what that is. I think it probably should be at least 1 week, but it might be even 2 weeks.
I fall on the longer side too. As we sit here today and as I consider it, I'd be in favor of a 1 week minimum.
Or even 31 days.
so I just think that the things that seem like public input are really important, we should highlight and come back to, because I think opinions will be variable.
And the next one was the, she referenced for one vehicle per lawful bedroom in the short-term rental.
Yeah, so that to me is a way to basically say you can't do it in residency at all, because one bedroom, parking space per bedroom, like, 2 or 3 or 4 bedroom place in a Residence C, you're not gonna get 2 or 3 or 4 parking spaces. So that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and her recommended language on this one is, notwithstanding any contrary provision in the zoning bylaw, short-term rental shall provide sufficient parking for the owner occupant plus the occupants of the short-term rental, which shall be at least one parking space per lawful bedroom rented as the short-term rental.
Right, so that's my issue.
Mm-hmm.
It will de facto outlaw it in Residence C,
Mm-hmm.
probably some Residence B,
Mm-hmm.
which means it would really be only Residence A just by a parking requirement. Which is the way Milton's done regulations in business districts, is to put in parking requirements that can't be met. But
Well, we don't
I don't
allow
know.
on-street parking.
Overnight without a permit, right?
And I
it's a
think
special,
I've said this before, and I really think our police department needs to be weigh in on this, and we need to tell them that they need to enforce this.
yeah, so it seems to me that so the adequacy of the rental, I don't think should be by bedroom. The adequacy of parking shouldn't be by bedroom.
And that's why she referenced what we have in our
The language,
other language.
right.
It
And
should be whatever
says
is
it's
required
adequate.
for
Well, this
the-
was what,
Okay,
yeah, what we have is that it must be adequate for the site, for the property.
right, but it
But no
also-
more than 5 vehicles.
It's no more than, right now, for a Residence C, you're required 1 parking space. So that would be suitable for the owner. So what you could say is, so,
I'm sorry, I'm not connecting, can you connect it for myself?
So-
Why I would outlaw it in C?
so because what
It's
her
just, you
draft
wouldn't be
is,
able to get
her
a
draft
four
said- yeah.
bedroom, a small little 4-bedroom cape that has a single wide driveway
Mhm.
with a detached garage at the back,
Mhm.
right? Can you, if you rented all 4 bedrooms, could you get 4
I see
cars,
what you're saying.
could you
Okay,
get 4
okay.
cars off the street? Probably
Gotcha.
not.
But it's saying it
So
shall
it's
be
just-
limited
it's just-
to,
so what
Yeah.
it means was you wouldn't be able to do it because you wouldn't be able to park it.
You can't park it, yeah.
So
Okay.
it's
But you
limited
can
by the
be,
parking.
you can be flexible about, like if someone's got a detached garage that's full of stuff, no one's gonna say, oh, you couldn't put a car in there. And you could do tandem. I mean, that's what happens in tight urban areas, there's.
Yeah, cause when I lived
I
on
mean,
West,
I'm not suggesting that, I agree with you about how the parking will restrict it, I agree with you on that. But I think there's probably also. But then it comes to the reality of if a renter comes with the 4 cars, where are they actually going?
Well, they can't rent that one.
yeah, that's,
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Mhm.
It's like you can't bring 4 cars to that unit. So that would have to be advertised as there's 1 parking space, right? Or, I mean, if
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen them where
It
they'll
has to
tell
go
you
to their
how
house
many parking
rules.
is.
You
Yeah.
can't
House
no
rules,
parking, no street
Mhm.
parking. Cause
And
that's when neighbors would really start getting upset,
Right.
is if all of a sudden there's cars that are all up and down the
Right.
street and, it's.
and then they're parking in front of people's driveways and then they
Right.
can't get out. I have a friend who lives on Brook Road and the people at Glover School is always parking in front of her driveway and she can't get out. So then she has to call the school and then, and then then it's on her to, say something to the parents, and that's uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
I mean, I'm not, if there isn't gonna be adequate parking, I'm not in favor of like loosening the bylaw to just allow it to be rented. That doesn't make
So
sense,
that's what Carolyn is saying, use
Yeah.
what we have, that
no,
it
but
has to.
she added a different language.
notwithstanding any contrary provisions in these bylaws.
So let's just say you're renting your whole house out, and your house has required 1 parking space, which is residency. Now, and your house has 3 bedrooms. Now, are you required to have 3 parking spaces for that same house because you're renting your house out as an Airbnb?
No, you're limited.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it says limited to, it's
You're
not saying
limited.
required to.
It's not required.
Okay,
So that means that if you live in Residence C and you have 3 bedrooms, that means you can only allow for 3 cars there.
let me read this again.
You're
The
limited,
comment.
No,
you're limited.
You're,
If
What- the
you
way-
have room, you are limited to that number of bedrooms.
the number of vehicles.
vehicles based on the bedrooms. But if you don't have the space, according to referencing our, so it's not a conflict, if you don't have the space in your driveway.
So if you have one parking space in your driveway, which is what you're required to have for the owner, then you can't, and you can't provide any other parking spaces, that means you can't do an Airbnb at your place. You need
Well,
to-
yeah, I don't know.
According to this, is that what this is saying?
Yeah, no, because actually now that I'm reading it that way as well, yeah, I think that's correct.
But you could have in your house rules that you need to call the Milton Police Department to request a temporary overnight parking.
Where people
it's
just
not-
will take an Uber or take the trolley,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then if they might not have a car, so,
Yeah, you don't have to provide,
have
if
to
you have
provide.
3 bedrooms, you don't
It says
have
shall
to provide
provide.
3.
If you
Is
look
that,
at
is,
her,
oh, in her
her
Oh.
comment,
So the original
her
one, okay,
recommendation.
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at her recommendation, which
No, I
I'm
know,
not,
I know,
I'm not-
and I'm kinda coming back to this limited, to this people talking about limited. So notwithstanding any contrary provision in the bylaw, zoning bylaw, short-term rentals shall provide sufficient parking, which shall be at least 1 parking space per lawful bedroom, right? So the
That's what
original
I was
language is,
responding to.
right, yes.
I like
That's
the
her
original
suggestion.
language,
Okay,
because it limits it.
okay. Mm-hmm. She would probably say notwithstanding any contrary provision in the bylaw. Because of the comment above, with the language dealing with temporary apartments.
Okay, right.
And the fact that I think this is the one that talks about, renting rooms for, whatever, there's some language, maybe it's subsequent about renting rooms for pay, basically.
And we definitely, the parking would still have to meet the other requirements in the bylaw, right? Like we only allow a certain amount,
Up to 5.
percentage of your front yard setback to be paved, for example, or to be used for parking, for example.
Right.
So you don't want the whole front yard paved or used as parking.
Right.
I don't know if we have that same requirement on the back. You see some of them, there's a lot of asphalt. But-
In the back, yeah.
um,
Actually, I'm not sure about that, actually. I'm very familiar with the front, because we get the driveway opening permits all the time that we have to sign off on.
Well, when you don't have allow parking on the street, you end up with, when you walk around or you bicycle around or maybe when you drive around, if you will, driving, but you will notice that because the garages are in the back and the driveways go back there, that backyards have a lot of asphalt. And it's somewhat unfortunate, I think. But that's the way it has worked out.
so in Quincy, it says, occupancy shall be limited to 3 bedrooms and 6 guests in a home at any given time.
Well, we do have 2 per bedroom somewhere here, right?
So, yeah,
We didn't,
so that's a two per bedroom, yeah, so the other 2, sorry, got distracted.
But I think they're capping the total number,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
yeah,
And that was again, a little bit of a
That's-
conversation today with Board of Health around, them inspecting in places where there are 7 and 8 bedrooms.
Well, even on,
Because
like,
Milton has those types
septic.
of structures.
like I have a septic, my house is on a septic. So you have to be careful about that.
So we're good with the original language,
With the addition of the notwithstanding,
notwithstanding Chris.
yes. Okay. And then this, I think, was also kind of on point with implementation. Right, in terms of, the adoption and kind
Wait,
of
wait, now where are we?
when it becomes effective and et cetera.
Registration requirements.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was sort of on point with how the staff would implement. Unless folks have more thoughts on that.
Was staff okay with these dates? Did
So
you say?
again, didn't get to that type of much more broad conversation about needing to understand this better and think
So it
through.
sounds like what we really just need to have them is to focus on number 4, the registration requirements. That seems to be the crux
Okay.
of the concern for them. or inspections
And we have to
too.
ask the police department about
For
their
the
for the parking. So it affects the police department as well. And really
And the
fire,
police-
because if the cars are parking on the street, then the fire department can't safely
Actually,
get
4,
down the
5, and
street.
7. 4, 5, and 7 are issues that need to be.
So did you wanna kind of table those, the discussions about the
I feel like we should.
building and health and then the number of, you know,
Because I think that's why we were reaching out, you know, does the health department wanna be involved? And if they don't,
I think they probably already are.
they
because of-
are, yeah,
Because of the, sort of the joint nature of how
Right.
how they do these inspections and sort of deal with these questions. So, but yeah, yeah. Getting
so maybe
down
we
to-
table that for our next
So I guess the
meeting.
question is, on a typical residence, does the health department do inspections for sanitary code, or does the building department do? So, I mean, to me, it's like, if
Neither.
they're not familiar,
Well, there's
well,
Only requires inspection upon request, which is Caroline's note. And then in my opinion, the town can impose annual health inspections. So that's sort of again a you know, the town has the authority to do so. Is it appropriate, is it over regulatory, I don't know. You know, I guess those would be, and you know, one of the things that was discussed as well is, you know, there's an opportunity to get some excise tax, additional excise tax from these uses. Could that be, you know, dedicated to the additional staffing that's required for some of these things?
because if I'm looking at D, it says initial inspection,
Mm-hmm.
and then it says building commissioner or health department, leaving it open.
Mm-hmm.
And thereafter by the building commissioner,
Mm-hmm.
according to the state building code. So
Mhm.
to me, it seems like it could just fall within the building commissioner in any case, in the first instance, because it's falling to the building inspector in the second instance. So if the first instance, I guess I don't remember where this language came from, but the state building code and the state sanitary code, and then thereafter only the state building code.
Mhm.
So it's saying that it's allowing either one to do it in the first sentence, but then splitting them in the end. So why wouldn't you allow both, either or to do both? I guess is my question, you see what I mean?
And this is
Yeah.
only prior to issuing the
Initial.
registration,
yeah.
because then if you go down to 5 under inspections, then it says special service, health department and fire department may conduct inspections
Mhm.
as may be required to ensure safety.
Mhm.
So if any neighbor could call the health
Right.
department at any time and say, oh, I think
What's our
that
rats? Yeah,
that house
yeah.
has a trash problem, it could be a hoarder problem, it could be rats and mice problem.
That happens now, right?
Yeah, that happens now,
Mhm.
yeah,
And that's just reiterating that.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
But so Cheryl, your point with pointing out the D, prior to issuing registration certificate, the building commissioner shall inspect applicable requirements of the state building code and state sanitary code. So
That-
right now, the ISD does the building code and the sanitary,
So
but that's what I would assume. I don't, does the health department doesn't come in and inspect the
The health
sanitary?
department doesn't inspect a building to determine that it's compliant with the building code, as far as I understand.
Or sanitary.
I didn't think so.
I don't think so either. So if we are,
This is the type of stuff where
Yeah.
I was trying to take really good notes today at our meeting, but, you know, sort of like questions around, you know, kind of occupancy, you know, in terms of like how many people are in the bedroom, right? Questions around, you know, sort of, the sanitary conditions, the kitchen, the the bathrooms, like to you know what I mean, like those are some of the types of things that would be investigated, I guess, I don't know if investigated is right, inspected, like especially if there was, like a complaint or what have you. And so, those were a couple of the things that were just sort of like, were kind of mentioned today kind of quickly, but I couldn't be quoting to you sort
Yep,
of
yep.
like the code and
That's
the
what we can drill into
chapter.
though, with the further conversations.
Yeah,
okay.
and again, I think, Carolyn's indication here is that the town would have the ability if they so chose, right? But again,
Yeah.
you're sort of like balancing, is this like way over-regulated, like you're gonna send people out once a year every time they get an annual renewal of their registration? Or are you gonna send somebody out once a year to confirm that, I've been in plenty of Airbnbs where they've got the extra bed in the bedroom, right? They've got a full and a twin, So, and again, I don't know, I don't know enough about, sort of like that occupancy, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and I think some of the things that are problematic have been challenging as well, are, because these aren't really sort of like a really clearly defined creature like in the zoning bylaw, like kind of across the board, right? So it's hard to know sort of like, how do you apply that standard when this is like sort of like an animal that's kind of like not really, it's not that, it's anyway, and I think it's still kind of crystallizing sort of like exactly what this animal is. It's not a boarding, it's not a lodging house, it's not a hotel, it's not a regular apartment. It's not, you know what I mean? So when you're applying some of those standards, I think that's where that's what I'm kind of, that's the sense I'm getting, and that's some of the stuff that I'm reading, but again, it's
So I think for 4, 5, and 7, I think these are discussions that we need to have with our building department and health department.
Well, I think D should just be consistent. It right now allows the building commissioner for both building and sanitary in the first sentence, and then in the first inspection and the second inspection, it bifurcates them, and I don't understand why that would be. So, whether that just, I think, needs some consistency, and yes, they should wait on it.
I'm not trying to carry on a long conversation, but that $250 value is probably gonna be too small.
I agree.
The reaction that you have from the two departments in terms of enforcement, and you just see how this could be really challenging and could affect the town financially because of what this might allow people to do if they take action. And I can imagine before we hear from either of the offices, the building department or Board of Health, they probably have a sense of anticipated overwhelmment with their responsibilities.
Yes, and I thought that we left the last conversation was that we were gonna remove specific dollar values from
Yes.
the bylaw so that it could be covered in the rules and regs.
Okay.
To your point, Sean, that might change in the future, so we don't wanna go back to the bylaw. But I also think that Carolyn said that we would need input from town staff to understand how much time they expect to spend on this, and we can't use this as a moneymaker necessarily, but just to cover the cost.
Yeah.
But I understand your point, Sean, that 250 is not enough. I think we said 500 collectively with registration and inspections last time.
And I'm gonna hold my point of view on cost until we hear from those other departments.
And it should be consistent with other application fees, so I think some of those,
Yeah.
the whole application fee in the town should be,
So we just want
Review.
application fee as established,
Yeah.
Right.
because I think
As
that,
established in the regulations.
Separate fee schedule, yeah.
The separate fee schedule is established in the regulations.
Yep.
Right,
By
and then,
regulations.
and then you'll be able to update those regulations without having to amend this.
Right.
At town meeting. Consistent.
because we talked about $250 for the application and another $250 for the inspection.
Right.
you
Right.
know, but
Right.
that should be up to them.
Yep.
Right. Down to H.
Well, and so you do get inspected then by the fire department. So
Yeah.
sometimes when like my diesel tank gets inspected, then I have
And
to
they have
pay
their own
it.
fee.
Then I have their own, yeah, I have to pay for that fees separately, so that wouldn't be a cap of like 500. It's every department
Gotcha.
has their own.
They charge $50 for home inspections.
And even that's probably not enough.
Selling home.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Start up one of those engines, drive it to any house in Milton.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The fuel alone.
Do they come with the engine?
No, they.
No, alright.
No.
I'm gonna call tomorrow if they do.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Their kids would
The
love
kids would love it.
A lot of places with the
That's
engine.
it.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Okay, down on H. So I did not think
Alright.
this was necessary to have, it seems, you know,
Yeah.
having somebody that you have a contact, a 24-hour contact is sufficient. I don't think you need to have a house sitter there.
I agree,
I-
I agree.
It seems,
And it's unlikely to ever happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, and who's gonna check?
So the consensus is to strike that.
Yeah,
G.
The
H.
last sentence of
H,
each.
okay.
Because elsewhere we do have 24 hour, with 2 hours, yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Striking that the owner must arrange for an on-site owner representative to reside.
So my investigation into, sort of this regulation question is yes, I think there should be regulations, especially if we're gonna try to, have the fees at a minimum. I think the regulations would be really helpful too for staff implementing. It's sort of a, gives you a playbook, right? Because you'll have new staff come on board, right, over time. So having those regulations, I think would be really useful for that purpose. I don't know that there's really, I'm not sure if the select board is the correct board to issue the regulations or not, I'm not sure. I mean, there are two options here, Board of Health and Select Board, which is interesting because, well, I suppose, inspectional services probably wouldn't issue regulations necessarily, I don't know that they necessarily would.
What do you see being in the regulations now?
I guess, a fee schedule, maybe information about, again, I feel like I would need to have a deeper conversation about have a conversation with Caroline and say, what do your regulations look like for this particular
Yeah,
type
are they like
of-
house
type of-
rules?
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think I'd want to understand that better.
I'm just trying to understand how that would be different than what's in the bylaw. And if the bylaw has to be voted on, and the regulations don't, who ensures that the regulations are consistent with the bylaw?
Yeah.
Well, is it sort of like our sign bylaw? We've got the bylaw and then we have the design,
The design, yeah.
the design
handbook.
handbook.
Yeah, the handbook.
So this is sort of be the same thing. You have the bylaw and then you have the regulations.
Regulations are typically for implementing the law, right? I mean, that's my very broad understanding of how this, you typically get regulations get promulgated after a law goes into effect, right?
I'm just kind of thinking
So-
about like how the zoning bylaws, like the state, had a very short law. And then the regulations were much more detailed, whereas this bylaw is detailed. That's why I'm just trying to
Right.
understand.
So just looking at the small scope of the research that I did, it looks like towns chose to either do the bylaw or regulation. Plymouth did regulation, Newbury did regulation, and Chatham did regulation. The rest are zoning, or the rest are general or zoning bylaws. And so the regulations are through the Board of Health,
Mm-hmm.
but the bylaw is obviously through town meeting.
How many, only 3 have regulations, do you have a guess of how many have bylaws?
Well, again, in my limited, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 out of the 10 out of 13 were bylaw and 3 were regulation. And then bylaw for Quincy, which is not in my list.
So somewhere around 25% have regulations,
Yeah.
75%
Yeah.
bylaw.
But when you look at them, it's pretty similar language and content.
And what were the towns again that did regulation?
Chatham,
Newbury.
Newbury.
Chatham didn't have a bylaw,
Plymouth.
or it had a bylaw and a regulation, correct? Or just regulation only? I feel like all the ones that we looked at were all either bylaws or, yeah.
Yeah.
So some of them may also have adopted regulations in addition to. I have to go back and, oh, sorry guys. Oh no, this isn't bottom screen sharing. Which was it, Chatham? Oh yeah,
Chatham,
regulation,
yeah.
yep, I see that, yep. Yeah, sure, yeah, Chatham Board of Health regulation. I'd have to read it. I'd have to read it and see sort of like what it incorporates by reference, and I just don't know.
So there are examples for the Board of Health too.
Yeah, and it does look like it's typically the Board of Health. That could be sort of another piece as well in terms of like who has the regulatory authority to adopt you know what I mean, and the regulations.
What were the other 2 towns?
Newbury and Plymouth.
Yeah.
But then Newbury says it's adopted by the town select board, so I'm not really,
Okay, some of them are the select board. I did see another example where it was 100% the town administrator and the select board
Through a general bylaw.
adopting regulations. That's what kind of makes me wonder if those 2 bodies have the authority to adopt regulations.
In those towns, I wonder if they do have more septic than public sewer.
What's that? It's Chatham,
Septic, yeah,
Chatham,
definitely
absolutely.
septic.
Yeah, in Newbury and
because they're smaller and they
Plymouth.
have, yeah,
Probably
right, I gotcha, I
Yeah.
gotcha,
Plymouth's
I gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right, so that's more of an
That's
impact on
right.
those, that's why they're governing it, yeah, okay. Yeah, cause I bet you if
We have 2, well, Chatham is certainly
my septic is mentioned a lot,
certainly a rental community, you know, with the summer rentals.
Yeah.
They probably prefer it as a regulation because they have the flexibility to change it, deem that they need.
You're right, septic is mentioned in the purposes in both of those, yeah, yep.
Maybe Plymouth also.
cause that was, I know, their issues with the BTA zoning was because of their septics and their water infrastructure issues.
Alright, so,
Okay. So let's,
We're ready,
so we're on 5 inspections.
Can I go back to H? It's just, I wanna make sure that I understand this. The way H reads, I think I said this the last time we had this conversation. It reads to me that the owner has to live in the property 9 out of 12 months. Is that right?
yes.
So the only available time frame for it to be a short-term rental is 3 months, 12 weeks.
no, because again, you could be in the house while you're renting it out,
Okay,
part of it.
okay. So they have to live in the house, if they have somebody renting it, they have to be in the house for at least 9 out of the 12 months.
Correct. And those other 3, they could be in Florida or
Okay,
somewhere else and still continue to rent it out for short-term rental.
thanks for that clarification.
And that wouldn't be considered lodging, cause aren't we
So that was part A of my question. Part B is this determination that the person lived there for 9 months. So we're saying they proved their 9 months residency with utility bills, chances are they're never changing the utility bill to a renter ever. Voter registration, I mean, who changes their voter registration? Motor vehicle registration, I guess without going on, I don't think this works. If this is what we're at, I don't even know how to have somebody prove that they've been here for 9 out of 12 months. And if they are required to prove it, who in the town is vetting?
So, yes, I hear what you're saying. Is it less important that it's 9 months or 6 months? I'm just putting this out there. Is it more important that we're proving that the person actually lives there?
I'm what I,
I'm not sure it's so much the 9, like trying to calculate the actual 9 months. I think it's more demonstrating that this is your primary
Right, yeah,
residence.
right.
yeah, I'm not,
Do you see,
at the
what
moment,
I
I'm not really
mean?
sweating over 9 months,
Yeah,
10 months, 6
yeah.
months, 8 months, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, we're gonna write something,
Yeah,
we're gonna set a requirement.
mhm.
I don't know that anything that we put in there
Would
is
prove
really,
that it's your primary residence.
is really a valid way to prove it.
Yeah,
You
it's-
know,
it's
I don't even, you
probably
know,
not.
and we have yet to hear from the people that were asking to enforce this, but I have no idea how you enforce this. And how much, you know, whose hours are gonna be put forth to do it.
Mhm.
And back to my concern that I'll continue to talk about, what does it cost to do that? What does it cost the town of Milton to make sure that somebody is there for 9 months? And I don't think I'm gonna move off my point of view that $250, $500, $1,000, I mean, are you kidding me? We seem to encumber our town employees with all kinds of responsibilities as a town without recognizing what we're expecting them to do. But this doesn't, I can't wrap my brain around this.
They do have to give notification to their neighbors, so if the neighbors see that there's tenants in there,
Mhm.
I know,
they would.
it just doesn't seem, this
I-
doesn't
it-
seem like this
it's-
is gonna be feasible for anybody to track or make sure. So, you know, back to writing bylaws that can't be enforced, which is why I'm really anxious to hear what people have to say, the people that are asked to enforce it. It doesn't make any sense for us to write things that can't be enforced, that's not gonna serve the residents or our town employees.
Mhm.
What's enough on that?
But that's a good question for other towns, what they regulations. Okay, we are now on, we do inspections?
Did we answer aye?
Did we answer
before
aye?
inspections?
I think that's what I was asking Liz about.
Yeah.
I thought anyway, it was I.
Yeah, like what exactly are in these regulations? And
And how they
I-
differ from this,
Yeah.
that was my
Right.
question.
Absolutely.
And can you provide us examples of regulations in other towns?
I think we've got,
Or do we have
we've got
those-
a couple
those
of
three
examples.
a few
So
meetings
we're
ago.
not
Yeah.
forced to write regulations, the way Carolyn has it written is if any
Mhm.
shall be issued. Issued a
Well, one of the,
certificate of
again, if there are items that you wanna have some flexibility on and not have to go to town meeting to change because this is a bylaw,
That's where you have a
then,
schedule.
right, so you get your fee schedule is one example. I mean, I'd probably wanna think about, you know, and also too, it can be it's the implementation side of things, right? This is the law, this is the legal piece. There probably is some process in here, there is some process in here, but it's not all necessarily spelled out. I'd have to think about it, I'm sure there are things that would make sense to have in a regulation
So
as
what
opposed to this.
What the way this is written though, it says if any,
Right,
so it's leaving
yeah,
it
well, it's
open,
It's
not,
leaving it
yeah, and
open.
it's not
That's
right,
which
right.
I think makes sense,
Yeah.
to leave it open.
It's a
So
placeholder.
as you said, as not to have to go back to
Yeah.
town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, so I think it's good to keep it.
leaving it as a placeholder makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I see what you're saying.
right. And maybe you don't, if it's a placeholder, you may not even have to specify who's gonna issue them.
Right.
Just leave it, just kick it down a little bit.
Mhm.
Well, isn't, if the select board is the named body, the town departments fall under the select board, right? So couldn't they delegate it to the Board of Health or the building commissioner or whomever?
I would imagine.
So it just seems like if you said select board, it leaves it open to who they determine to be at the time, who has staff, adequate staff, or appropriate staff in terms of qualifications and skill sets or whatever. Because if we put it in here, well, what if later in a year, they say, well, the building department's really better equipped to do this than the Board of Health, then we have to go back and amend this?
Right. Totally.
So we're saying select board?
I think so, but, we could get a clarification from, if I'm reading that correctly or understanding it correctly, that they can delegate it all the way down since it's their.
Well, issued by the select board. So they would have to be the body to issue the regulations. I don't know that necessarily is terribly important, but
Yeah.
they can delegate the crafting, they'll have to issue them.
Since this is a general bylaw, it makes sense, I think. They would be the one issuing them.
And inspection services, I think we should just put a pin in this until we hear from those who would be inspecting.
We did reach out on the question of insurance. The $1 million is the sort of the floor for the state registration requirements. So everyone assuming they're in compliance with the state requirements needs that $1 million. Some of the different communities, it's graduated based on the luxury level of the property, right? They might require like an umbrella policy. So it depends. I reached out to Nick and Cody to see who the right insurance, the town's insurance advisor was on this one to see if it made sense to go over the $1 million for the liability, general liability.
And again, I don't know that we need to put $1 million in there. I think what I was reading Carolyn to say is, we can say operators shall provide proof of comprehensive liability insurance. But maybe, because will this change?
Anything that like that.
Well,
like
this sets the floor,
The number-
this sets the floor at $1
Is this,
million,
yeah,
so in the amount of at least $1 million, and my understanding is that's the state requirement.
Right.
okay.
So, it leaves it open that it could be higher.
Okay.
Necessity of providing vehicle registration. That was the next question that she highlighted.
Do we need, is that important to have vehicle registration?
I think this is one of those things that we felt as if could be public input thought on.
Yeah.
Or at least,
Public input?
I think so, wasn't it? Because we did talk about this.
Yeah, I think we also felt, is it something the police department might need,
Right.
rare like, they wouldn't have to disclose this, or, but they should have it available if the police were to need it. But I agree, to get public input on that.
Maybe even police department input, like why would they need this? Like if they're called to somebody's house for some other reason, if it's just someone's
Yeah.
home, they don't have this.
Because those party houses, those times on Blue Hill, the Blue Hill Parkway, or Blue Hill Ave, that one house,
Yeah.
that became sort of a drug party situation, and the police were involved with that. Police were called frequently,
And so
so
I guess
the police should maybe weigh in on this.
I think that's right, they should weigh in on it, it would be helpful.
Doesn't the town have when you register your vehicle, the town has a list of all of our registrations anyway?
This is the rental,
The-
this is the
Oh,
Airbnb
the-
person.
okay.
But even if you have borders for,
Yeah,
that
they
you're
wouldn't
allowed
have-
to, they wouldn't have them.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know about renters, definitely borders. anything.
Alright, so I think that was it for,
Next comment on the two people per lawful bedroom. So this conflicts. And she's asking if she's providing any alternate language here.
This is what I had asked, and I think with the orders, which was just unclear
Yes.
to me,
Yes, yeah,
and with the definition of family.
yeah.
And, so I guess her remedy would be a family shall not include. I don't know where is she proposing that to be here or somewhere else? You see at
I think
the
that,
bottom
I
of her
think that,
comment?
no, I think that I think that's the current language, Cheryl. I don't think
Oh,
she, I
I'm
don't think
sorry.
she's, yeah, I don't think she's, so in
That's a
this,
ZBL
Yeah.
definition, right?
Yeah.
Living bylaw.
Okay,
family shall not
Okay,
include
so she's
lodgers.
saying
Oh,
that-
this was the
okay.
paying, this was the language about the paying guests. Cause that's the one that kinda gets closest to Airbnb, is this idea of paying guests. So I'm guessing that, I think this definition of family was adopted in like, well, I don't know, maybe not Airbnb, because I think it was in the early aughts.
so
Was Airbnb around
saying
that
then
long
that,
ago?
Mhm.
Was
I don't think
Airbnb
so.
around that long ago, like in the early aughts?
No.
Really well.
Aughts, like the zeros, like 2002, 2003.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But so is she suggesting then in her comment that we're fine here with saying this?
So I think the reason it's flagged is it circles back to that notwithstanding anything in the zoning bylaw to the contrary. Right? This accessory use question, I think is, has been the subject of some of the court cases in terms of, how are you classifying these, right? Is this customary to a single family residence, what have you? So some of the, again, as I'm educating myself, so that's her recommendation, is that sort of blanket, and flagging it, because it will be, and like I said with the conversation with the Board of Health, like the sanitary guidelines in terms of, how many persons per bedroom and sort of what, what's safe and what's whatever, that sort of is
And that would only-
intertwined here as well.
and that would only trigger if somebody called and said, hey, that's a 3-bedroom house and there's 10 people
Yeah,
staying
right.
there.
Mhm.
And that could happen
Mhm.
at any time,
Right,
with or without this bylaw,
Mhm.
that
Right.
she would get called.
True.
So,
so that,
Were
I
they-
think, that's my understanding, I think it's flagged for that purpose, and,
okay,
that, I certainly confirm that with Carol.
that's good.
This one was, this is kind of circling back on that same interrelated conversation, and it does impact sort of like the question on inspections, in terms of, kind of like how these uses are classified, right? So, I'd wanna understand better too, exactly the lines between the different classifications and sort of what triggers what type of inspection and what have you, but this was to be struck.
Mhm.
Okay.
Then down,
Same with the enforcement,
yep.
police department or designee.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, their input is crucial here, but if the commissioner is the one who's issuing the notice of violation, do they have to do to be the one who's doing the inspection or other anyway? Otherwise, is the health department calling them and saying, can you issue a violation? Or is the police department calling the commissioner and saying, can you issue a violation? So that's just a question for me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Is this one of the ones, or is that a, oh, no, sorry, that's C has the comment.
I was talking about B. Well, it's really kind of the whole grouping, but B
Yes,
says the
yes.
commissioner
Gotcha, yep.
or designee, but still, and the group A has
Who's the commissioner in that reference?
building commissioner.
Building commissioner, oh, sorry,
I think
sorry.
that's, yeah, at the outset.
Yeah, I think that's a question for them, like how that would work.
Because let's just say, or a fire alarm problem, then it might be the fire department that issues the violation. But I don't know how, I don't know, so
Mhm.
that's just to clarify.
Well, I think like in my experience, if there's an issue with another department, like the police department wrote a letter to the building department and, you know, weighed in on something, they weighed in. And so that the commissioner, the police, the building commissioner would have no idea what was going on, like on weekends or after hours, cause the building commissioner wasn't there, but the police would know. So I think the building commissioner requested information from the police.
Yeah, I know there's been some tricky situations recently with overcrowding and some different things going on, so. And I think multiple departments have been involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
I
agree.
don't know who issues the citation, if there's multiple violations, do they all issue their own citations, or in which case B might need to say the appropriate department or whatever issues that issue. Because here it's very clear it's the building commissioner who has to do it.
Yes. Gotcha. So there's a long comment about
What is this referring to?
enforcement and the fines essentially.
Oh, okay.
So just some different, being very clear that the maximum allowed is 300 for fines. This wouldn't be like application fees and things like that, these are fines for non-compliant.
So where did this come, this is just says this bylaw shall be punishable by a fine not to exceed $50 for each offense. And that's just a made up, that's not state law or anything.
So I think that, yeah, she's referencing the section of the bylaw I wanna say that 275(3)(1). I'd have to look it up.
Again, this is like, our fines are so not consistent in this town. And I feel like they just let the building inspector, make up fines. And I think they need to be consistent, and I think, it shouldn't come down to one person just making up a fine.
Yeah, this is from our zoning. In the event such an occupation shall continue following the revocation and expiration of occupancy permits, subject to a fine of no more than $50 for each offense within each day that business continues to follow, following such notice being deemed a separate offense. Yeah, you're right.
So that, so it's just so that's the zoning,
That's zoning, that's
if you're
50,
in,
yeah.
but if you're found in violation of a zoning violation, then that's,
Revocation or expiration of an occupancy permit. And notice to the residents shall be subject to a fine no more than $50 for each offense. So yeah, it's, I wrote that consistent, I
Yeah.
underlined it.
But is that specific to the temporary apartments?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
No.
It's saying, that's in residences AA, B, C
Okay,
district uses.
okay.
and that's a zoning bylaw.
It's a zoning bylaw,
Okay.
right? But that might be the thing that you referenced at the beginning, in that when this goes through, there'll be some cleanup that needs to be done.
Because this
Right.
isn't a zoning bylaw, this is now a general bylaw, so what's the fines for general bylaws?
It says there's not consistent.
Yeah, yeah.
Surprise, surprise, right?
An opinion I have is, I don't really care about fines. I'd give people a reasonable amount of time to correct, whatever it is, and if they don't, revoke
They
their
lose,
registration. People just don't, who cares, people don't care about a $300 fine, they just don't, it's nothing. Just revoke the registration if they don't conform.
I think give
Well,
them a
I
cure
would if
period.
I were-
Well, if it's every, if
I
it's
would if
per
I was
day, it's
a
per day.
non-corporation.
Could add up quick.
You're an esteemed member of the planning board.
Avante wouldn't get, but no, like, I mean,
You know, why be tolerant, fooling around with $300 fines today, $300 is nothing.
so you think one offense you're done?
Give them 60 days to correct the,
But what's the correction, like if, what,
I don't know what the violation is.
Yeah.
The
Because
correction
We
is
have in
whatever
here if
the
there's
violation
three
is.
violations
Then you're
within a
done.
12-month
Yeah.
period, you're done.
Yeah.
So you get 3 violations, you're done.
3 strikes.
3 strikes, you're out. But I think there should be something, but I don't think we should say what the amount is. So I think that should be part of the cleanup.
If there's gonna be a bylaw, there should be a set of regulations and all that
Yeah,
stuff
fine.
should be in the regulations, all of it,
So
so that
maybe
you
we
have the
just-
flexibility to change it.
Yeah.
And you don't get encumbered by having to go back to town meeting to change a bylaw.
So
Just
we say violates any provision of this bylaw and associated regulations shall be subject to a fine, period.
as denoted in the regulations.
right.
As but we don't necessarily have regulations quite yet.
To create. You know, I think at some point there should
We
be,
will.
there should be a discussion about, okay, that belongs in the bylaw, that belongs in the regulations. And
Fine, alright, so fine, comma, subject to the regulations. But take out the amount.
Fine or as defined, fine
That's
as
defined,
defined.
yeah, in the regulations. $300 is the maximum allowed, it
Is
says.
that her opinion, or is she
That's
saying that
state law.
that's state law?
State law is
That's
300,
that's my understanding, is
Per-
that
That's what she says here
Yeah.
in her comment.
for a zoning violation, a state law is the max is 300 per offense. Interesting.
That's it.
And her question for the planning board down below,
Yeah.
the,
Well, that was from the beginning of the conversation.
yeah, so I still think that's something, to Maggie's point earlier, for discussion, with the public, with residents. Because I'm one who's inclined not to, because somebody might say, why is my neighbor allowed to and I'm not allowed to? But I think this is a bigger conversation.
I,
That's why
Very
I
much
just
I
don't want us
agree.
to lose track of that as a,
and whether it's,
So if there are areas that you don't want to necessarily allow them.
not me, but I'm just,
For the
Maggie
public,
raised it
for the-
earlier.
For the public,
And I thought that it's a point that should be brought to the public, because they should know that you can do it that way and weigh in on it.
Yeah.
I just raise a concern about equity in that case, but that would be my concern about it, but.
Well, I mean, that can be said though across the, any zoning bylaw, and if you look at businesses, some businesses, they all have different rules and regulations, and it's frustrating, like, I've been an advocate of having consistency across, at least in industries.
It's why we need to address the pre-existing.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Like, so if you have a
Because
restaurant,
you
you
would
need the
have-
number of parking for the same amount of seats, no matter which business district you're in. It should be consistent.
Liz, I have a question on some of my mind, I just wanna ask, how many towns, and I think you may have already said this earlier, or maybe Al said it earlier, how many towns in the state have either a bylaw or a regulation for this?
I don't know the answer to
Oh,
that.
you don't, okay, I thought,
It seems that it's more likely than not, the towns are regulating them.
Remember, the state just started allowing it, regulation of it, what's that law passed, do you remember?
Oh,
I
like
just asked
2017?
AI
Like
says
20
there's no, 'cause
Twenty,
they
I
don't.
think it was, was it,
But it's a new,
This
it's
is-
a,
this is what, the chapter 64Gs?
Yeah.
That, where they where they regulated
Yes.
the short-term rentals. I wanna say like 2017-ish?
yeah, cause it
Did
wasn't.
I read that today somewhere?
Let me see.
That's-
2000, end of 2018, took
Yeah.
effect on July 1, 2019.
Yeah.
So I think
Right.
people were looking for a way to regulate them, because
Right.
they weren't being regulated, right?
So 7 years ago, the opportunity to regulate them
Mm-hmm.
was made law.
Yes, well, to regulate them,
Mhm.
yes.
Right, and to have that excise tax
Yes.
and what have you.
Community impact, yeah.
Yeah.
And to prohibit, you can still prohibit. The option is to prohibit too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it gets right back to the very first
First,
night
I
with
know,
Carolyn,
yes,
which was, do you
yes.
really wanna go there,
Yes.
because they're happening anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're balancing that.
Yeah.
And the safety and the, you know, it's just, it's a balancing act.
Remember that the default, I think as she said, is yes, they are prohibited, right?
Yeah.
But there's no mechanism to enforce it,
Mm-hmm.
which is why there was advocacy, I think, for the state to pass the law that allows them to be regulated, right? I think places that have a lot of tourism are probably the places that really pushed it, like the Cape and the Berkshires and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I asked because I'm just curious, how many towns have, you know, have prepared their own bylaw or prepared the regulations? To me, it's a meaningful number. I can't remember, is it 350 towns in the state, or 360?
351.
351, right?
Yeah.
351, yeah. Just
Maybe
curious.
that's something you could put on the question to the listserv, the planners listserv, right?
Yeah.
So who-
There's a planners listserv, so it's like a big email list, like that the planning departments, like I remember prior directors, if there was a question about something,
Yeah.
you could say, can you put that out to your colleagues, you know, and find
Yeah.
out what those colleagues are doing?
What the sense is too.
Yeah.
I'm sure plenty of them have their finger on the pulse and can say, oh, it's gotta be over, you know, 60% or whatever, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like based on the
Or even
level of
MAPC
activity.
might know,
Yeah.
or other state and regional
Yeah.
agencies.
You know, if it's, whether it's meaningful to any one of us or not, it's probably good information for us to have for a resident that might ask.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Sure.
351 towns, and we can say 50% of the towns in the state have
Mhm.
created a regulation, okay.
Mhm.
If it ends up being a list of 20,
Mhm.
you know, I just, it should prompt us to say, well, why only 20 out of 350?
Mhm.
You know, why did the other 330 decide not to?
Mhm.
Some may not have any problem or anybody's raised the issue. I mean, for us, it's not like we sat at this table and said it's our number one priority. But we heard from residents who said that they wanted us to take a look at it.
I haven't heard from one, but I'm not sure, so I haven't heard from one resident about this, but
There were several who came here to the planning board.
several out of 28,000.
I'm just saying, you said not one. No,
I'm
there were
saying, no, I
several.
didn't say that.
We did have two
I
residents
said I haven't
now
heard
to
from
give
one.
testimony. Yeah.
You personally haven't heard from
I
some.
personally haven't heard from one.
So, I mean, again, AI, it says like towns like Brookline, Linfield, Salem have effectively banned short-term rentals in single-family homes if the property is not owner occupied.
Right. Watertown is the only one that's actually prohibited.
Oh,
Out of
really?
351.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting.
And
Huh,
Boston,
why?
Cambridge, and Seekonk have completely banned non-owner occupied short-term rentals.
Well, that's what this is. This
Yeah.
is banning
That's
Banning,
non-owner
not,
occupied.
yeah, so.
Right.
And that they
That's
don't,
interesting with Watertown,
they
huh?
don't know.
Mhm.
There's no single statewide count of prohibited towns.
We're
That's-
sharing ChatGPT? Oh boy.
Well, this is good, so I don't know if it's too soon to invite the staff to in 2 weeks to our next meeting?
I can certainly ask. I kind of broached that.
Cause maybe there could be like a working group, what you taught, like
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
Nick, Caroline, and Michael could maybe have a meeting, sort of walk through your thoughts.
Pre-meeting.
Yeah.
Pre-meeting on 4, 5, they don't have to go through the whole bylaw, 4, 5, and 7, because that's what affects them.
Mhm.
And unless there's other things that they would, of course, you would like for them to comment.
Mhm.
And maybe the police, the chief of police,
Mhm.
because they're getting calls, complaints.
On the massgov website, what do we know about seasonal homes and short-term rentals? It says that in fiscal '21, short-term rentals accounted for 43% of total lodging tax revenue. That's
Almost
high,
50%,
yeah,
that's a
and
lot higher than I
the
thought,
remainder comes
yeah.
from hotels and conventional lodging.
Would you?
This was '21, and then it said the share of revenues fell to 20% by fiscal '24.
Yeah, it might have been COVID impact as well.
So towns can charge a lodging fee, right? The town can collect lodging
Mm-hmm.
fees, but we can't collect fees off of short-term rentals. Is that accurate?
No, you
The
can
law
charge.
allows,
You
yeah,
can, yeah, you're allowed.
You
to
can
charge,
charge,
but adopt an excise.
Yeah, and adopt an excise.
the state law charges 5.3, I believe, and
Yeah.
the law allows up to 6%
Yeah.
with that law.
Of the rent value?
Of
6%
the,
or
yeah,
something, of the
yeah,
income,
no, it must be
income?
the rate you're charging.
Has to.
And then if the community impact fee was on top of that, it could be up to 3% if they own 2 or more properties.
Yeah.
So when do we
Oh,
adopt that?
Only if it's 2 or more properties?
That's what the state law said.
Oh, that's interesting,
So if it's
okay.
only 2 or more
Because we're not
properties, so we're
allowed.
limiting it to one,
Right,
so
right.
we
We
can't
can't do that,
we
right.
can't.
Right, it's, yeah, right, we're even more prohibiting
Oh,
commercial,
interesting, okay,
yeah.
that's good to know.
So this same question on mass.gov said that Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, fully 60% of all housing units are set aside for seasonal use. Cape Cod, 36%, Berkshire County, 13%, while no other region reported a share greater than 3.5%. So
6%,
I would
that's
think
wild.
that that's maybe what we might be in the category of, since we're not a coastal community, the Berkshires
Yeah.
or Cape and Islands.
60%, that's wild.
Okay.
Even 3%'s a lot.
Alright.
1% of the state's housing stock is registered at the DOR as short-term rental.
Right, and Milton has, our assistant town administrator did some research, and Milton has 75.
75 short-term rental.
75 on that list, but it's a cumulative list. So from the date that that list was established, something could have gone on that list, I don't know what the date it was established, but it could have been 4 or 5 years ago. And it hasn't been active, so it's not a
Meaning
great.
that also if I'm not active, perhaps.
Yeah, it may not be active, it may, whatever, so 75 since that list got established.
And where
Have
did
been
you
registered.
get that information from?
So it's
Just
from the Department of Revenue. The platforms have to register, I think. I think it's the only way for the state to collect their portion of the tax, right? So literally finding this out in the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
just, it's there's a lot there,
Yeah, you-
Trying to understand like the universe, right? And how many of the 75 are owner occupied? I have no idea.
I bet
Right,
very
'cause you've
few.
got- Yeah, cause now you have that restriction, but again, you're creating this pathway, so. I don't know, it's hard to understand the universe, but the bottom line is that there's a housing shortage. It's a very desirable place to be, people are going to be doing this. Like even if it's a narrow pathway, right? there's a lot of very interesting configurations in this town, right? I've seen every configuration under the sun with these ADU proposals, right? Gatehouses and you know, using the upstairs of this and, you know, repurposing that and what have you. So there's a lot of different configurations that people could, you know, could try to work with, right? So it's but it's hard to understand what the universe is here, cause it's unique, you know? Maybe we try more research into similar towns to understand like the universe of how many of these are actually gonna happen.
Well, just imagine if 3% is that number that seems to be, if we hit that,
Mm-hmm.
and if the 75 was accurate to what exists, we'll go from 75 to 300.
Well, what's the
3%?
3%? I didn't follow that part,
That's just an average across the state
of how many units are being used for this purpose?
Within a town.
within a town. It's an average.
You said
Nobody-
1% later.
I'm gonna, 1% for the total.
Yeah.
But obviously it's higher
Yeah.
in the vacation locations
Right,
and lower
right.
everywhere else. But the average of everywhere else was 3.5, I think, or that was no
Okay.
more than 3.5. I have to go back, I'm sorry, I'm off of that at the moment now.
Yeah.
But,
But if it's legalized and we get to 3%, it's that 3% of the residents we have in town is 300.
but it's not allowed in multifamily in age restricted, like Fuller Village, for example, right?
But I
So it
predict
wouldn't be
ours
all
go
the
down.
residents, but-
If it has to be owner
280 and then
occupied,
270, take those out.
but if it's owner occupied, I think we're gonna be able to get rid of a large percentage of our current existing short-term rentals. And again, how we.
Or they'll
we-
continue just to be illegal.
But they can be, so what is, I guess they can continue to be fined, that's the benefit of the fine, right?
True, yes.
Because you continue to be fined if they're operating it illegally.
Yeah.
But you can't evict an owner though, right, from their home if they're.
But there has to be some sort of mechanism to have it removed from Airbnb,
Yeah, so.
right?
Like banned from the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but
they
that was
could just
another thing I saw
advertise it
too.
themselves.
Remember somebody was doing a fine if you're
Who's gonna
advertising
find out that?
Oh.
Yes, yes.
to get it before, because that was also, again, really trying hard not to put words into someone else's mouth, but that was also a little bit of the conversation today was around once somebody is in a unit, right? There's a whole, you know, if there's any issues with, you know, removing them from that unit, you know, it's not a, you
Yeah.
know, there's a whole
Yeah, it's
process there
hard to
as well,
remove
you know?
renters.
If
So-
someone is operating one of these illegally now,
Are they gonna
are
register?
they gonna register? Do you think they care at all about a fine? You know what I mean? We have plenty of delinquency of things that are required.
Well, could you put a lien
Taxes,
on it?
utility bills, you'll collect it in 20 years.
Or could you put a lien on the property?
Well, I think Carolyn could answer that, but I'm sure you could. I mean,
He
if
was
there's a
in
law
here.
and someone has a legitimate, fine, I'm sure it could be, but, you know.
I mean, that would be sort of the sort of thing that might get,
It costs you more to put a
Attention.
lien on for $300 than the $300 itself, you know,
A day.
I think, I don't know.
I'm just thinking
Well,
what
lien
might be.
doesn't
the-
expire, I don't think,
Yeah,
does it?
You know, 300 a day for fines.
Yeah.
Like
300
if you
for
really,
violation, right?
wanted to,
Violation. But if
Yeah.
really wanted to, you know, stack it up
you're
on
violating
somebody.
it,
And we set up to 60 days, so what's, is that what we said earlier?
I have to go back and look
I
and
do
see,
that out there.
honestly,
Okay.
but yeah, but I'm sure there's gotta be some level of limitation on something like that, but it could be a significant amount of money.
if it's ever collected,
Pardon me,
if it's ever
I hear you,
collected, right?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, do we have to say, I like the lien idea, do we have to say in it that
You
you
don't-
have to put a lien,
you-
or is it just automatic?
You don't have to do that,
you
I
know,
mean, the
yeah.
town,
They
if-
have that ability anyway.
Yeah, if someone
yeah.
hasn't paid,
Yeah.
anybody's subject to a
Yeah.
lien, you don't have to claim that.
You don't have to state it in here, it's already.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
okay. So, should we move on to our next agenda item, the last And that's just the update to what we would submit to town meeting, changing from the 10% to the 15% in language by Carolyn. And can we pull that up on the screen, just
Sure.
for people watching, so they can, it's a minor change.
So just a little bit of context on this one. Her sense on this was the approval from OHLC really guides this in terms of the 15% being in effect. So this striking out of this final sentence, if the EOHLC determines in writing that the town has not shown the 15% requirement to be feasible, not fewer than 10% of the dwelling units in any development containing 10 or more shall be affordable to households earning income up to 8% of the AMI, area median income. Her sense was that this was not urgent, because again, EOHLC's ruling stands that places the 15% requirement in effect. This could be a housekeeping item that you could bundle with some of the recodification if you so chose. It's your purview if you wanna move it forward for the fall town meeting. This is her suggested drafting. It would literally be just we would do a hearing on it in the next month or so, and it would go for fall town meeting, or it could be bundled with some other
I
housekeeping
think we should go
items.
ahead and just do this.
Okay.
I think it's, if we have development projects that come before us, we just want it to be crystal clear.
Okay,
That's,
gotcha,
I
if
agree.
everyone else
Yeah.
agrees.
I agree.
okay.
And I think this is perfect language.
Do you need to vote
Yeah.
to submit this to the warrant?
Yes, let's just take a formal
I'll
vote.
make a motion to submit a revision to chapter 27, section 3.25 MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District, subparagraph P3 by deleting the text as provided by Town Council Carolyn Murray and as seen on the screen.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, get that zoning hearing advertised and scheduled.
Great.
Can quickly, I think under staff update, maybe this could apply. Liz, I understand there's an economic development bill pending at the state legislature that would codify site plan review. And I was thinking that
The budget, is it the budget?
economic development bill,
Oh, okay.
they tend to throw, I guess,
Okay.
what I've read, throw things into a couple of bills just because they haven't been able to get to it, so there's like lots of things that get considered.
Okay.
Tend to,
Yeah.
it's become like the normal practice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything gets piled in there and no one knows it.
Like
Yeah.
MBTA zoning.
so I just want us to
Yeah,
be aware of it because we passed ours, which I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we reviewed a draft of that bylaw or that legislation because it was pending.
yeah.
And then there may be other things in there that we need to
Okay.
be aware of.
Okay.
That was one that I recall seeing. I think that's in the next few days.
The Mass
That'll be
Winds
really-
Act?
So which,
Maybe it's not what you're referring to.
okay. I know there's some things, I think, in the budget that was signed by the governor today too that affect land use, but I don't know if they affect planning board as much as the Board of Appeal. And
Well,
it just would be,
they'll affect like zoning bylaw amendments.
yeah, so I just think that if we could have that, I guess as an agenda topic, coming up, just like what do we need to do?
That was signed today? I thought that was still.
The budget bill was not the economic development.
Oh.
Mass
Okay.
House passes catch-all bill, including policies, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and didn't that
Okay.
include that houses of worship are now not, they can do multifamily?
Mhm.
That's in the
Housing.
economic development bill, which is still under
Yeah, okay.
discussion, I think, but that was included in it. That was like one of the, I guess, hundreds of amendments that were proposed to be included, and that one made it.
And I think there was not a limit on height or number of stories,
I
is
think
that
you can
correct?
regulate that, but I haven't seen it, so
Yeah,
I've just read
For houses
little
of worship?
Uh-huh,
religious, not just houses of worship, religious
Religious.
properties owned by
Yes,
religious
yeah.
institutions.
Oh.
This
So-
actually, Michael Wright sent something today on.
That was on the budget, that's
Yeah,
what
on the
it is,
budget.
yeah. But there's, I read something else about the economic development bill today, but
I saw that too, but I
Did you?
didn't have a chance to.
I didn't, I just saw the highlights.
Yeah.
But site plan
Maybe
review
it was on.
caught my eye, and I know it's been pending for a while, because you may
We looked
recall,
at it.
people said there's no state like enabling act regarding, so towns are kind of just doing what they,
It's a creature of the courts.
yeah, so that was the courts upheld it, but now this would put it into
Into the zoning act?
the zoning act, right?
Okay, I don't know.
I'm not-
I'd have to look at it.
I'm not certain, honestly, but
It just,
you go to read these things and,
it just
it
seems
tells you
like
like,
they're taking away the town's rights to do things. That's to me, my general feeling, and I didn't dive deep into it, but to me, it seems like the towns are gonna be losing out on all of these things.
All right. Anything else, Liz, or Lindsay?
That was all I had.
All right. And I think we're completed with the agenda items, so I would take a motion to
motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Second,
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
So variances are gonna go from substantial hardship to practical difficulty?
And then there's gonna be promoting the public good, which is housing, is included in that, and so that's.
Extends existing protections for non-conforming uses. So they also cover non-conforming structures.
also, I'm like, I think I might have said this before, but I'm hung up on these fines because I had to negotiate, the former building inspector wanted to fine me $5,000 per offense. One of my offenses was starting my machine 15 minutes before I was allowed.
5,000?
5,000 per offense, there was 3 offenses. And 2 of them were failure to notify, cause I was putting in my drainage swale. All of the conditions that the planning board requested of me, I was putting in, and I didn't know I had to call the building inspector to say, I'm doing this. So I had 15 minutes before 8 o'clock to use the machine. Didn't notify him I was gonna have a hydroseeder on site, and didn't notify him I had a truck. So it was $5,000 per offense.
That's
So $15,000. So then I had to hire an attorney, and this is when Warren Galvin was town council. We had to have a meeting and negotiate it down. And it wasn't the town administrator who negotiated it, it was the building inspector,
Okay.
which my attorney, who's from out of town, said, this is highly irregular. He goes, just take a note as to what's happening here. Your building inspector has an incredible amount of power in your town. And so we negotiated it down to $1,000 per offense. So if it truly is, what did you say, $300? I have to put in a rebate. I need to like get some money back. Like I'm serious.
That's,
And when I asked that question about what constitutes an emergency to go and do a site inspection when I was off-site for 3 years, the building inspector went to my off-site in Canton at 10 o'clock at night to do a check on the trucks that I had off-site. And then filed that I didn't have a truck there and assumed it was at the nursery when one of my guys had taken it. And so I got issued a complaint. The other thing I knew about the police department was at the time, the chief questioned my registrations. So I have farm plates, and he questioned if I should even be legally have farm plates.
you have a farm.
And I said, for the registry, that's through the registry, and to get farm plates, it's a really high hurdle to clear. High hurdle to clear. Oh my God, are we? Oh my God, all that. Delete everything I said. So, like, the